Handicapper Steve here, handicapping the racing from Churchill Downs here on Saturday. It is the 3rd of May, 2025. It's Kentucky Derby Day from Churchill, and I'm going to look at the Kentucky Derby and all the other stakes races on the program. But before I get on to that, remember to please follow me on Twitter at Horse Racing Kit 5 for more selections for race courses around the world, and join me throughout the Derby or the Triple Crown Trail for some more previews of all those good races ahead. It's going to be quite a few busy weeks for me coming up ahead. I just closed on my first apartment, so it's going to be quite cool. So I'm going to be moving out of this place and going somewhere different, a little bit farther away from here. You're still in New York City though, but it's going to be a little crazy the next few weeks. But it's always crazy in the springtime. First Saturday of May, you always have the good races. Here at Churchill with the Derby. So we're going to look at all these stakes races 4 through 12. Buckle up because we have quite a few races to look at here. Unfortunately, I don't mind a wet track, but we're going into the unknown with the track conditions Saturday morning. Right now, it's Friday afternoon. The track conditions, it looks like we're going to need to find another arc again and get some two of every animals. That's how much rain it looks like they're going to be forecast there at in Louisville. Something I saw about a half inch of rain. So it's going to be a wet day, but what can you do? But you just can't. You're just at the mercy of the weather sometimes. But races 4 through 12, let's get to it right now from Churchill here on Derby Day. The fourth race, it's the Knicks Go Overnight Stakes. It's going for a purse $200,000. Races for 4-year-olds and upwards. We have a field here of 14 horses entered to go the 1,600 meters or the 1 turn mile here at Churchill. I'm gonna go with the 6 horse Capana as a top selection. 6, 9, 12, 10 in the superfecta. 6, 9, 12, 10 super. Top selection 6 horse Capana. This 6-year-old given by Hardspun. Brett Calhoun trains. Brian Hernandez Jr. gets the mount. They ran the horse most recently in the Evangeline Mile here at over at Evangeline. 1 mile on a wet fast seal going on the 6th of April, and he fit second by 3/4 of a length that day. And he stalked the pace that day. He had the lead. Accreditive, who's won that day's run back this one today, just had the jump on this horse. But this horse, he ran his heart out behind a horse that closed from the clouds. I think cutting back to a 1 turn mile back to Churchill, where this horse hasn't won locally, but has run some very good races in defeat here. He's 8-0 on this track, but has 5 places. I think he could finally be the bride, not the bridesmaid, on this track today. But not a bad race with the 2 turns at Evangeline last time out. Two back, he ran at Sam Houston, 6 furlongs and option 50, and he won by 2/4 of a length that day, 2 3/4 lengths that day. And again, he sat back early, saw a good pace to close up into, and he did just that. An 89 bar, that was a very good run, especially with it being his first start since the 6th of July. That came at Indiana, mile 70 in the Schaefer Memorial, where he finished fifth by 7 1/4 lengths that day. And he just had nothing around 2 turns, a very hot day. He just wasn't excelling. But then again, here at Churchill last May, mile 16th off turf and option 175, finishing second by 1/4 lengths. 5-star General's a decent horse, just had the jump on him, but he got around the race course well. He ran this one last year at 6:20, nearly caught strong quality. He finished second by a half length, closing up from the clouds. Won last year's Evangeline Mile. I think back here to a 1 turn mile. Training well coming this one. I think he could be the bride on this track finally. Let's use him at 5-1. I think 9 horse here, liberal arts for Luis Saez and Brad Cox Cohen also. He ran most recently in the American Pharaoh Overnight Stakes at Oaklawn, mile 16th in March. He finished fourth by 6.5 lengths that day, and he just never settled in the early portions of the race. He never quickened up. It just wasn't his day to win. In the 5th season, 2 back at Oaklawn, a mile on the 25th of January, he finished third by 3 lengths. He didn't have the best beginnings, was a little bit wide. He moved a little bit late, but again, I don't know if he wants another horse that wants to go 2 turns. He ran here in November with 7.5 on the slop, a very similar track that you're going to see today at a lounge race, where he won by a head, closing up in the clouds. I thought that was a very good race. If you just look over his 2 turn races, he just hasn't really run those particularly good races. I do think cutting back to a 1 turn mile back to Churchill, where this horse has run very well in the past, I think at 3-1, he could get a piece of it. And even the 12 horse here, Patriot Spirit for Junior Alvarado and Michael Campbell, he ran most recently in the Essex Handicap over the mile in the 8th at Oaklawn, where he just couldn't keep up late. Also got beat by decent horses, but his race in the 5th season of place wasn't bad at all. And then, some of his races last year, especially at Colonial or at Hawthorne, those races could definitely win here. 8-1, an outside poster I think can win going the 1 turn mile. It's a long enough run to the first turn where he could save some ground. I'm going to give him a shot here at 8 to 1 on the ticket. But to recount my selection for the fourth from Churchill, it's the Knicks Go. Going to take the 6 horse Capana. Give kudos to the 9 horse Liberal Arts and the 12 horse Patriot Spirit. 6, 9, 12, 10 Super. 6, 9, 12. Taking off the multi race wagers, let's get to the fifth race from Churchill. Fifth from Churchill, it is the Churchill Distaff Turf Mile. It's a Grade 2 event going for a purse of $750,000. Race for fillies and mares, 4-year-olds and upwards. We have a field here of 10 horses going 1,600 meters or a mile on the Matt Win turf course. It's going to be a very boggy turf course. I'm going to go with the number 6 horse here, Sacred Wish. We're going to go 6, 5, 10, 8 in the superfecta. 6, 5, 10, 8 super. Top selection 6 horse, Sacred Wish. This 5-year-old mare by Not This Time. George Weaver trains. Jean Velasquez gets them out. Ran the horse most recently in the Grade 1 Jenny Wiley at Keelan, a mile 16th on the 12th of April, and he finished fourth by 2 1/4 lengths that day. Off the bench, he needed the race. It was just flat that day, was wide, and he just never quickened up. I think coming here second off the bench, drawn very well, could be forwardly paced. I think she could find the trip to win. But the biggest question with her today is the turf course is going to have some moisture in it. Can she handle the turf course? From where she's drawn, historically, Churchill, the rail is not the best place to be when it rains at Churchill because the water drains to the inside. You want to be in the fifth or sixth path, kind of like a Nabel did. Well, Nabel and when she won the Breeze Cup turf was in the outside rail. Basically, that's where the best part of the course that week was. But well, that was also the old turf course. But traditionally, when the turf course has some moisture at here at Churchill, you want to be in the fifth or sixth path. I think where she's drawn today should really get her a little bit better ground, and I think she could close up well here off the bench. But since coming to the turf midway through her 3-year-old campaign, she's really become a better horse, and they found the thing for her. That's where she's really run her best races. But she needed the race last time out. Two back in the Pegasus World Cup Filly Mare Turf at Gulfstream, mile 16th at the end of January. Second by a neck that day, and she sat back early. Stupidly wide in the lane, but she closed up well. She nearly caught the winner, but she ran her heart out that day. And then against Grade 1 quality horses in the Matriarch at Del Mar, 1 mile in early December, winning by a neck from a tracking trip. She really got the job done. Her race in the Golden Cove at Santa Anita wasn't bad at all either. Coming to this turf course for the first time, could show some pace if she wants. She could sit a little bit behind, giving Johnny up who knows this horse the best. Training well, Palm Beach. I'm going to give her a shot here at 3 to 1 on the ticket. I think the 5 horse here, 5 towns for Grand Motion and Irad to win also. Ran on a very, very boggy turf course in the Gallaret at Pimlico last May, where she finished second by 7 3/4 lengths. Fluffy Socks really had a good handle of the ground. This horse just kind of stalked him, really just couldn't get there late, but she ran her heart out. Came back to run a very good third on the EP Taylor turf course at Woodbine in the Canadian Stakes, and came back to run a very good place in the Noble Damsel, where she just got outgained by the winner that day, but she ran her heart out. She came back to run in the Sand Springs at Gulfstream in late in March, where again she needed the race off the bench, but she got down the race course well. I think she could handle given the ground. As run race that could definitely win here at 10 to 1. Let's use her. And even the 10 horse special wand for Luis Saez and Brendan Walsh was winning the last time out. Finally in the Honey Fox, 1 1/4 lengths from a dream tracking trip. She saved some ground to get away with it. A very good clear victor. Prior to that, ran the first lady at Keelan over the mile in the fall, where she just never really got going late. But won at Kentucky Downs in a very nice allowance race back in September. If you look over her form in Ireland as a 2-year-old and early 3-year-old campaign, she's handled ground that has given it. You're gonna have to overcome a wide poster. It wouldn't surprise me her 5 to 2. There's a pick 5 that begins with this race. Let's use her there, but I do prefer the other two before her. But to recount my selection for the fifth now from Churchill, it is the Churchill Downs Distaff Turf Mile. Going to take the 6 horse Sacred Wish. Give kudos to the 5 horse 5 towns and the 10 horse special one. 6, 5, 10, 8 super. 6, 5, 10 in the multi race to the 6. Sixth race from Churchill, it is the Pat Day Mile. It's a Grade 2 event going for a purse of $600,000. Race for 3-year-olds here. We have a field here of 9 horses going 1,600 meters of the 1-turn mile here in the Pat Day Mile. I'm going to go with the number 6 horse here, Gaming. We're going to go 6, 5, 2, 1 in the superfecta. 6, 5, 2, 1 super. Top selection 6 horse Gaming. This 3-year-old Colt by Game winner here. Bob Baffert trains. John Velasquez gets the mount. 3 to 1. His most recent appearance came third 30th of March at Oaklawn, a mile in the Hot Spring Stakes, and he finished second by 4 lengths that day. And he needed the race off the bench. He just kind of stalked all around the race course and just never quickened up. Was a little bit flat that day. I think cutting back to a 1 turn mile, not the world's deepest Pate mile we've ever had in the last 10 years. I think he could, find the trip to the winner's circle a lot easier today. Also, being forwardly paced on this track with with it being wet is going to be good for him. But the big question is, can he handle the wet course? Now, we'll have to wait and see. That's the big unknown. He ran two back in the Southwest at Oaklawn, a mile 16th in late January, and he just stuck up the place. He finished eighth by 16 3/4 lengths that day. He was very rank. Juan Hernandez just didn't let him go that day, and he just couldn't keep up. Weekend out of it, it just wasn't his day to win. Maybe he just want to go 2 turns there, mile 16th at Oaklawn, and then he ran prior to that in the Los Alpachurdi and Los Alamitos, mile 16th in mid-December, finishing third by 8 1/4 lengths. Journalism really took off clear. Getaway car, next start winner also really ran clear. This horse just wasn't matched for the winners that day. And then the Breeze Cup Juvenile ran a massive place behind the stablemate Citizens Bull, who was the next star winner. This horse was just wide, but he got around the race course well in the feet. Not a bad run. And then his victor in the Del Mar Futurity was quite impressive at 4-1 as a bit of an upsetter. Really grinding it out to the wire and broke his main in mid-August at Del Mar quite nicely, also by 5.5 on the front end. It looks like he'd be versatile take. Set the pace like he did on his debut at Del Mar, or like he did in Del Mar Futurity, closing up from the clouds. He could do that also. Coming here, drawn very well, 3-1. If he can handle the mud, he could find the winner circle very easily. I think the 5 horse here, Gate to Wire for Todd and Flavian. I don't know if he's going to get a Gate to Wire victor here, but he's a good horse that I think cutting back is another thing going to be good for him. He ran the Fountain of Youth most recently with the mile 16th at Goldstream, where he finished fifth by 4 1/4 lengths, where he just wasn't comfortable around the 2 turns. Down the backstretch, he bumped around a few times. It just wasn't his day to win. He ran terrifically in the swale at Goldstream of the 7 furlongs of, very or a good race at Rich in History, by the way. Go look up that swell, history. He saw a good pace to close up to 109 flat for the 3/4. Finished the race 122 and 2. 93 buyer for him, Victor, winning by a half dozen. He came home clear. That was a very, very good run for him that day. And then up 75 at Goldstream over the 5 furlongs on the Tapeta. Finished fifth by 4 lengths, where he just couldn't get there late. But off the bench, he probably needed the race. I think another horse coming back to a 1 turn 7 furlong or 1 turn mile should really suit him well. I'll use him on the ticket, and even the 2 horse built for Umberto Rispoli and Wayne Catalano. He was on the Derby trail. Didn't really do a lot of running Louisiana Derby where he weakened out of it. Well, in the Risen Star, just couldn't keep up. And, he had a very wide trip in the LeCompte, which kind of cost him. The only race he won was Gun Runner, where he had everything his own way on the front end. Another horse, I just think he's going to benefit back in trip. 7-2, let's use him on the ticket. But to recount my selection now for the 6 from Churchill, it's the Pate Mile. I'm going to take the 6 horse game and give kudos to the 5 horse Gate to Wire and the 2 horse built 6-5-2-1 Super, 6-5-2 in the multi race to the 7th event. It is the Twin Spires Turf Sprint. It's a grade 2 event going for a $600,000 purse, races for 3-year-olds and upwards. We have a field here of 12 horses entered to go 1,100 meters or 5.5 furlongs on the Matt Winn turf course. Biggest question now with this race is, I have a feeling that Churchill in the last 4 or 5 years since they put in this new turf course has been very, very conservative with the usage of the turf course when it has a little bit of moisture in it. This is going to be the biggest test now with this turf course with moisture in it. So it wouldn't surprise me if this race, out of all of them, probably comes off, and maybe they'll save it. Most definitely they'll run the Turf Classic on turf. But if there's a race that they might take off the turf, it might be this one. I handicapped it for turf, but like I said, out of all the races, this one scares me that it might get run on the main track. But with that being said, I'm going to go with the 4 horse one timer as a top selection. We're going to go 1-8-5-7 in the superfecta. 4-8-5-7 super, 4-8-5-7 super, top selection 4 horse and one timer. There we go. 6-year-old Geln by Trap Shot, Larry Ravelli trained, Sheriff Loveberry gets the mount. They ran the horse most recently on the 14th of December at Turfway, 6 furlongs in the Holiday Cheer Stakes, and he finished third by 4 3/4 lengths that day. And he was with them early on, but then that was it. For the first furlong, he really ran terrifically, but then he just was flat. He never really quickened up. Back to a 6 furlong trip. I don't know if he liked it. I think coming back to 5.5 furlongs on turf, where he'll see a strong pace to close up into. He's drawn very well here today. I think he can find the trip to win. He ran 2 back in the Woodford Stakes at Keeneland, 5.5 furlongs in early October. Finished fifth by 2 1/4 lengths that day, and he just had no forwardly pace that day. He was way out of it. He moved a little bit late. For him to get fifth that day, I thought was decent, but he has to be more into it early on. Also, I don't think the rail draw was to his liking. He had 11 horses on his outside, which really wasn't a benefit to him. And then prior to that, in the Kentucky Downs turf sprint at Kentucky Downs, 6 furlongs on their uniquely kidney-shaped turf course, finished sixth by 5 1/4 lengths that day, where he just stalked and again never really getting into it. He ran a week prior at Kentucky Downs, 6.5 in a launch race for 220,000. No wonder they ran twice there, great prize money. But he finished second by a head, and he just missed late. The winner just outdueled him to the wire, but he ran his heart out with a 93 buyer. And then in a black type stakes at Hawthorne or over the 5 at the end of July, he finished second by 1 1/4 lengths that day, where he just got caught the wire, but he ran his heart out. He's a versatile type. He could set the pace or come from a little bit behind. He's training well at Hawthorne off the bench. At 10-1, I think the two Ravelli horses, I think he's the most likely winner of them. I think the 8 horse here, Rouge, Road Lightning for Flavian Pratt and Tom Clover can win also. First time stateside in the Shakertown of the 5.5. She finished second by half a length, where he just couldn't get to the winner. He got caught at the wire by the winner, Think Big, who's running back this one today, but he ran his heart out. The races before that ran on a lightning fast turf course in Doha, in the local Group 3 there, where he won by a length that day, closing it from mid-pack. I thought that was a very good run. And then the Prix d'Alibi, the Champ at Longchamp over the 5 back in October on a very boggy course, finished eighth by 5 lengths. That 5 furlong turf course could be it's one of the toughest 5 furlong courses in the world. It's very, stamina built, and he just really wasn't handling it that day. It won on very boggy conditions in the Prix de Couvert prior to that, but or finished third in the Prix de Couvert and an all-out finish, just couldn't keep the head up late, but he ran his heart out that day. But on Arc Day, he just really just got beat by better horses on the day also. But if you look at some of the races, especially on the soft ground last year in the UK, he was running terrifically. Probably going to see some soft conditions today at 7-2. If this race stays on turf, I think he's very likely winner also. And I think the 5 horse Arrest Me or the 5 horse Arrest Me Red also could find a piece fit for Corey Lannery and Wesley Ward. Won the Big Daddy at turf way over the 6th and the Torpedo quite nicely in March. And then some of the races last summer, especially Ellis, that run from Ellis to Keeneland. Those races weren't bad at all. He's 3 for 1 on this turf course. He ran this race last year, though, where he had a very wide poster, never really getting into it, but is a lot better coming into this race this year than he was last year. He's drawn a little bit better also. Well, a lot better, not drawn in the parking lot, drawn in the field, basically, on the turf course this year. At Churchill, not on the outskirts of Churchill. But, he's training well to come to this one. At 6-1, it wouldn't surprise me. Let's use him in the pick 4 here, or the pick 6 that actually begins with this race. But to recap my selection, the 7th from Churchill now, it's a Twin Spires turf sprint. Going to take the 4 horse one timer. Give kudos to the 8 horse Rouge Lightning and the 5 horse Arrest Me Red. 4-8-5-7 Super, 4-8-5 in the multi race. Let's head to the 8th event. The 8th event from Churchill. It is the Churchill Down Stakes. It's a Grade 1 event going for $1 million purse. Races for 4-year-olds and upwards here. We have a field of 11 horses going the distance of ground of 1,400 meters or 7 furlongs in the Churchill Downs. I'm going to go with the number 6 horse, Extra Anejo, as a top selection. We're going to go 6-11-2-7 in the superfecta. 6-11-2-7 super. Top selection, 6 horse, Extra Anejo. This 5-year-old horse made into the mischief. Steve Aspson trains. Joao Rosario gets them out. I was there last time out at, well, not there, physically, but I was there in the winter circle with the horse after I bagged him in the Commonwealth at Keeneland, 7 furlongs, 8th of April. Finally cutting back in trip. He found a good pace to close up into, winning by 1.5 lengths at 4.5-1. That was a very good run. He came up a little bit wide late, but, he ran terrifically. Another horse, like I mentioned earlier many times, cutting back in trip. That's what he wanted to do. They figured it out with him, and he's run these terrific races with some very strong buyers. Coming here, next logical steps, Grade 1 quality horses, not the world's deepest Grade 1, should see a strong pace to close up into, and I think he could, find the trip to win. He also getting a great finishing rider, Joel Rosario up. He ran 2 back in option 100 at Churchill locally, 7.5 on the 12th of September. Finally cutting back a trip was a success, winning by 3/4 length. He sat back early, so some good numbers to close up into 109 and 4 3/4. And he flew home clear. A very, very good run with a 90 buyer. And then ran a clunker behind Hit Show in the West Virginia Governor Stakes at Mountaineer, mile 16th, 4th of August, finishing 4th by 3 lengths. He was dueling on the front end, but then just really, stunk up the place. He sat on the front end than Hanshin locally over the 1 turn mile here in June, where I just don't think he does his better running style that day, on the front end. He finished 7 by 10 1/4 lengths, again, flying on the front end, very quick to that half mile, which probably cost him that day. And then an option 100 here over the 7 last May, off the bench, winning by 3.5 lengths. He really came home clear. I think back to a shorter trip. against some quality horses, I think he could find the trip. I think the 11 horse here, Mulligan for Luis Saez and Rudolph Brsequin also. He ran most recently in the Scar Mile here in New York and Aqueduct, 1 mile on the 7th of December, where he finished second by 1 1/4 lengths. Maybe the mile just got to him, locked, really freaked that day, freaked two back after that in the Santina handicap. But this horse, he stalked, he had the lead, locked, caught him late, but he ran his heart out for being back from the Brewers Cup. I didn't think it was a half bad race. The Brewers Cup, he finished third by 3 lengths, where he gained some ground. If the race was 7, he could have made it interesting late, but still, I don't think nobody was catching straight, no chaser that day. But he ran his heart out that day. But then his summer campaign was incredible. He won the 4 with a one Buyer by 5 1/4 lengths on the front end, saying some great fractions. 109 flat to the 3 quarters, finishing the race 121 and 3. That was impressive. An even faster race against not the world's toughest horse in the John Nehru at Aqueduct, some furlongs on the 6th of July. 1 1/4 lengths, 108 and 1 3/4, 120 and 2 for the final 7 that day. He really ran terrifically. And then here at Churchill last June in Optional 80, winning by 3 1/4 lengths from a track and trip, he flew home clear. Coming here off the bench, Rudolph Brissett, not the best numbers off the long refreshing, but I think this is a quality horse that could run a good race here. I'll definitely use him in the pick 5. And I also think the 2 horse Banishing for Jose Ortiz and Dave Jacobson. Jacobson horse could be very, they'll run terrific races and then they'll just run clunkers. He ran, really good race in the behind First Mission, the Oklahoma Handicap about 3 weeks ago. Ran terrifically in the Oklahoma Mile, but I think coming here, get some very, very tough horses over 1 turn mile. I'm gonna have some question with him. Since last fall, he's run terrifically, but Jacobson horses, like I said, just can be very inconsistent at times for me. I've noticed at 5 to 1, I'll use him on the ticket, but I have questions with him. But I do think the other 2 are more likely winners. But it's a very good head scratcher of a race here. So I think you want to go deep in the pick 4 here, or the pick 5 here. But to recount my selection now for the 8th from Churchill, it is the Grade 1 $1 million Churchill Down Stakes. Going to take the number 6 horse Extra Neho. Give kudos to the 11 horse Mulligan and the 2 horse Banishing. 6 11 2 7 Super. 6 11 2 in the multi race. Let's get to the pick 4. The 9th race from Churchill. Pick 4 begins with race 9 from Churchill. It is the American Turf Stakes. It's a Grade 1 this year, going for a purse of $1 million. Races for 3-year-olds here. An oversubscribed field of 18 horses are entered, but only 14 could go. 1,700 meters or a mile 16th here on the Mountwin Turf Course. One of my favorite, divisions of the season here in America are the 3-year-old turf horses. Going to that Belmont Derby. This is really one that starting at Gulfstream with like the Palm Beach Stakes, and then going forward with like the with this race, the American Turf, then going into the Belmont Derby, Saratoga Derby, Dueling Grounds Derby. It's a great division, ending off with the Hollywood Derby in December. But this is the one, everybody likes 3-year-old colts on dirt. This is my division right here, keeping a track on them as the season goes on. But my top selection here, I'm going to go with the number 7 horse here, Zulu Kingdom. I'm going to go 7-13-3-5 in the superfecta. 7-13-3-5 super. Top 7 horse, Zulu Kingdom. 3-year-old Ridgeling by 10 Sovereigns. Chad Brown trains. Flavian Pratt gets the mount. They ran the horse most recently in the Columbia Stakes at Tampa, a mile on the 8th of March, and he won by a neck that day, and he stalked all the way around the race course. Had to game it out to the wire, but he got the job done. Even money favorite, 82 Buyer off the bench. He improved off his 2-year-old form. It was a good race. Coming here off a little bit refreshing to this turf course. Gonna have to handle some soft ground, but he handled it on debut in Paris at Saint Cloud. I think he can find a trip to win here. He ran in the Brewers Cup Juvenile Turf at Del Mar at 2 back, 1 mile on the 1st of November, and finished 7th by 4 1/4 lengths that day. And he was just wide, bumped around, and he just never got into it. To add insult to injury, also, Flavian lost a whip in the lane. He wasn't going to win anyway, but he just couldn't keep up there. He just a little bit too inexperienced for that race that day. Also, that turf course at Del Mar, you have to have the dream trip. He just didn't have it that day. But he ran the Pilgrim 3 back at Aqueduct, 1 mile 16th on a yielding outer turf course, winning by a neck from a tracking trip. Had to be used a lot that day, but he gamed it out to the wire. He's the kind of horse, since coming here to America, when he gets to the front, he kind of yields up a little bit. But so you have to keep going on him. But he got the job done that day. And then with anticipation at Saratoga, mile 16th in late August, winning by a neck again. He stalked, he had the lead. Again, yielding himself up at the wire, but he gamed it out to get the job done. Has run Spires terrifically to win here. He's drawn well. Can handle given the ground at 4-1. I think he could find a trip here. Bit of a wacky selection, the 13 horse Maui Strong from Vincent Chiminau and Dale Romans. I thought his race in the Transylvania, where he stalked all around the race course, finished third by 2 1/4 lengths. He needed it off the bench, but I thought he showed some potential that day. Prior to that, he gained some ground in the Kitten's Joy at Gulfstream. If the race was a little bit longer, he could have made it interesting late, but and again, not a bad race in the feed. And then the Dania Beach at Gulfstream, where he finished third by 1 1/4 lengths, a little bit quicker fractions, he probably would have benefited that day. But again, he showed potential. He won on this turf course quite impressively from a very wide poster in November here. He had a decent third at Keeneland in his sophomore effort. 30 to 1 has run some decent buyers coming into this one. I think he could find a piece of it. I'm going to use him on the ticket. And even the 3 horse New Century for Brendan Walsh and Irad. Most recently in the UK at Newmarket, 1 mile in the Craven Stakes, a local prep race for the 2000 Guineas, which is actually today at Newmarket. He finished fifth by 5 lengths, and he moved a little bit late. He needed the race off the bench. Prior to that, he had a very wide trip in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf at Del Mar over the mile, where he finished fourth by 2 lengths. He moved a little bit late, but he needed to have a better post draw that day. And then he won the Summer Stakes, closing up from the crowd, from the clouds in the Woodbine back in September. Another horse I think he can handle given the ground. He's drawn very well here today. First leg of the pick four. We're going to use him to end it off, or to begin it off in the pick four. Let's recap my selection now for the ninth from Churchill. It is the Grade 1 $1 million American Turf. We're going to take the 7 horse Zulu Kingdom, give kudos to the 13 horse Maui Strong and the 3 horse New Century, 7-13-3-5 Super, 7-13-3 in the multi race to the 10th. Race 10, it is the Derby City Distaff Stakes. It's a Grade 1 event going for $1 million purse. Race for fillies, mares, 4-year-olds and upwards. We have a field here of 16 horses entered. 15 and 16 are both AEs. 14 could go 7 furlongs on the main track. I'm going to go with the number 7 horse here, who is Fava as a top selection. I'm gonna go 7-8-9-6 in the superfecta, 7-8-9-6 super, top selection 7 horse Bava. This 5-year-old mare by Gunrunner, Cherie DeVoe trains, Ira Ortiz Jr. gets the mount. They ran the horse most recently in the Grade 1 Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint at Del Mar, 7 furlongs on the 2nd of November. Off a bench that day, finished 8th by 7 1/4 lengths, and was just flat. Never really got into it. Maybe shipping cross country wasn't the right thing. I think coming here to this course here today, we'll see a very strong pace to close up into. I think she's going to be a lot better here than she was at Del Mar last time out. She ran 2 back in the Ballerina at Saratoga, 7 furlongs on the 24th of August. She finished third by 4 1/4 lengths that day. Society really freaked that day. She was moving a little bit late, but again, she still needs something more. And then prior to that, on the strike here at Churchill, 7 furlongs in the Chicago Stakes, winning by 1 1/4 lengths from a dream tracking trip. She saw some good numbers on the front end to close up into, and she did just that. A very good run. And guess what? She won this race last year with a 103 buyer from a very wide poster, winning by 2 lengths from a dream tracking trip. She came home clear and had a very good place in last year's Madison Stakes. Her 4-year-old campaign was very good last year to begin off. Kind of tailed off a little bit late in the season. Maybe she saw a tired horse. She's refreshing here. She's had some good workouts under her belt at Keeneland coming into this one. At 6-1, I think she's a very likely winner. I also think the horse drawn to her outside, the 8 horse Ways and Means, is also a likely winner for Flavian and Chad. Most recently, at the end of a very tough campaign, she just couldn't keep up in the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint at Del Mar. 7 furlongs there on the 2nd of November. Finishing 5th by 1 1/4 lengths. She just couldn't keep up late. Yielded out of it. It wasn't her day to win. If you take that race out, she had a very good campaign. She won the Gallant Bloom over the 6.5 on the slot, but knocked it up quite impressively at the end of August or end of September. Winning by 4 lengths on a very sloppy day. She came home clear. Prior to the test, winning by 2 1/4 lengths that day. She flew home again and then won over the Wilson Mile at Saratoga during the Belmont Stakes meeting. Winning by 8.5 lengths, closing up with a 104 buyer. That was very impressive. They tried to run the Oaks Trail last year. Actually ran last year's Oak, where she was drawn well wide and just never really getting into it. She's proven she just wants to cut back and trip. When she cut back and trip, she really ran these terrific races. Coming here off the bench, Chad has decent numbers off the bench. I'm going to give her a shot on the ticket. Also, she's training incredibly well. 5/8 mile drill on the 26th of April and 58-4. Coming here today, let's use her on the ticket. And I also think the 9 horse Emery for Brad and Manny can win also. Most recently in the Madison at Keeneland, she just couldn't keep up late, and the winner just caught her at the wire, but she ran her heart out. Prior to that, she had a very good place in the Insider Information at Gulfstream, and then won the Raven Run quite impressively last year at Keeneland in the fall. Back to this track where she's 1 for 1, winning the Leslie's Lady last June locally. I'm going to give her a shot at 6 to 1 in the pick four here. But to recount my selection for the 10th now from Churchill, it is the Derby City Distaff. We're going to take the 7 horse Veva, give kudos to the 8 horse Ways and Means and the 9 horse Emery, 7, 8, 9, 6 Super, 7, 8, 9 in the multi race. Let's get to the featured turf race of the afternoon, the 11th race from Churchill. The 11th race, it is the Old Forester Turf Classic. It's a grade one event going for a purse of $1 million. Races for 4-year-olds and upwards. We have a very good field of 12 horses going 1,800 meters or a mile and eighth on the Matwin Turf Course. I'm going to take the number 7 horse Running B as a top selection. We're going to go 7, 1, 4, 6 in the superfecta. 7, 1, 4, 6 super. Top selection, the 7 horse Running B. This 6-year-old horse by English Channel. Chad Brown trains. Flavian Pratt gets them out. The horses first start off the bench came the 1st of February at Tampa, mile 16th on the turf course in the Grade 1 Tampa Bay Stakes, and he won by 3/4 of a length that day. He showed no early pace, which sometimes he does, sometimes he doesn't. He didn't show early pace that day. Was way out of it early on, but he was at a beneficial of a strong pace up front to close up into, and he did just that. Quickened up nicely, even money favorite, 100 buyer. Best of his career. That was a very good run. I like that they're giving him time between races here today, getting Flavian back up, who's probably the best turf rider in the country right now. When he teams up with Chad Brown, they really team up to good victors, best turf trainer in the country. Also, I think, coming here today against some quality horses and finally over battle in the eighth, I think he could find the trip to win. He ran two back in the Artie Schiller at Aqueduct, 1 mile in late November or early November, where he won by a neck, and he had to grind it out to the wire, tracking all the way around the race course. When he got the job done, gaming it out to the wire, he ran terrifically at 98 bar. That was a good run. And he didn't run half bad behind Carl Spackler more than looks in last year's Keeneland Turf Mile, a mile on the 5th of October, where he finished fourth by 2 1/4 lengths. He just got outclassed by the other ones that day. Had a bit of a tough trip going into the far turn, but he got down the race course well, and then cutting back and trip prior to that in the Bernard Baruch at Saratoga over the mile 16th. He won by 1 1/4 lengths. He stalked all the way around the race course, and he went away with it. A very nice 98 bar. They got a little wacky with him last season in the UN handicap, where he finished sixth by 2 1/4 lengths, where he just never was really into it. But he had a very good third in the dinner party at Pimlico on a boggy turf course, and won his seasonal reappearance at Keeneland quite nicely also last year. Refreshing here, drawn very well, can handle a bog on the turf course. At 5 to 1, I'm going to use him. I think the 1 horse interrogation for Frankie and Shook could find a trip to also. He ran terrifically in the Red Smith last fall over the mile 3 furlongs at Aqueduct, winning by 2 lengths from a tracking trip with a 101 buyer. He closed up well to get the job done. I thought he ran terrifically in the Pegasus World Cup turf after that on the mile and the eighth at Gulfstream, where he finished second by a neck. The Spirit of St. Louis just clawed him late. He was drifting in the lane, but he found a good trip around the race course. Maybe a little bit flat off the bench most recently in the Maker's Mark at Keeneland, but refreshed near back over a mile and the eighth, drawn very well. I think from where he's drawn, he could find a trip here. And I also think the other Chad here, redistricting for Irad and Chad, he just ran a clunker in the Muniz Memorial most recently at the fairgrounds off the bench. He finished sixth by 5 3/4 lengths, and he just never was really into it. But he ran terrifically off the bench in the Seabiscuit, closing up nowhere at Del Mar, and then the Knickerbocker off the 11th bench nearly. He just missed late, but he ran his heart out. He's a horse. It's been a struggle at times to keep him on the track, but when he is on the track, he really runs these terrific races. Coming here at 10 to 1, drawn very well. I'm going to use him on the ticket also, so watch out for him. But to recount my selection now for the 11th from Churchill, it's the Grade 1 Old Forester Bourbon Turf Classic. Going to take the 7 horse here, who is running B. Give kudos to the 1 horse interrogation and the 4 horse redistricting. 7, 1, 4, 6 super. 7, 1, 4 in the multi race. Let's get to the big one, the 12th race now from Churchill. 12th race from Churchill. It is the Kentucky Derby. It's a Grade 1 event going for a $5 million purse. Races for 3-year-olds here. 21 horses were originally entered here, but we have a few withdrawals here. The 14 horse is scratched here. We're also going to take out the field 10 horse, the 10 horse here, Grande. So we'll actually be down to a field of 19 horses going 2,000 meters or the mile and a quarter in this year's Kentucky Derby. As a top selection here, I'm going to take the 18 horse Sovereignty as a top selection. 18, 21, 9, 8 in the superfecta, 18, 21, 9, 8 super. We're going to use all 4 of those horses in the pick 4 here, but my top selection this year in the Derby is 18, Sovereignty. This 3-year-old pull by Into the Mischief. Belmont trains this one. getting Junior Alvarado, his regular rider, back up. Most recently in the Florida Derby at the end of March at Gulfstream, he had Manny Franco up in that Florida Derby, and he ran terrifically. He was drawn in the parking lot, but he finished second by 1/4 lengths. Not a horse that has a lot of forwardly pace, but he sat back early, slowly moved his way into the race. He closed up well. If the race is a mile 3/16, he definitely would have made the race interesting late, but he got down the race course well. He's a horse that benefits with, I think, with a Y poster here today. He also benefits with the mile and a quarter trip, getting Junior back up. He's ran a very good race on this track as a 2-year-old. I think he's coming to this race very well, and I think he could find the trip to win where he's drawn. Written two back in the Fountain of Youth at Gulfstream, mile 16th on the 1st of March. Off the bench, he won by a neck that day, and he sat back early. He was a little bit wide, but he flew home clear late, winning by a neck with a short stretch finish. It was a small margin victor, but if the race was mile and eighth, he would have won by open legs. That was a very, very good run for him that day. And then last fall here over the mile 16th locally in the street sense, he won by nearly a half a dozen lengths that day. He sat back early, stupidly wide, but he really closed up well. He's a horse that's proven he can get some dirt in his face. He's a horse also that's proven he could, run for days. Since coming to the longer trips, he's really just run these terrific races. 95 buyer in the Fountain of Youth, last time out 92 buyer. Should really been on the improve today. Training well come this one. At 5-1, I'm going to use him. I think the 21 horse Baeza finally getting in for John Sheriffs and Flavian Pratt. I think he's a very likely winner also. They think highly of him. They bought him for $1.2 million at the Keeneland September 2023 sale. So, watch out for him. He's a horse also. I think he's going to run for days. Outside poster, I think, is also not bad for him. Historically now, recently, you want to have a bit of an outside poster on the Derby. I don't think you want to be drawn on the inside. I think outside's actually a little bit better. And, quite a few horses have won it from out here in the past, 20 years. But most recently in the Santa Anita Derby at Santa Anita, mile eighth in early September, he finished second by 3/4 length, and he sat back early, got up with journalism late. Journalism just outgamed the wire, but this horse, he wasn't going down without a fight. He ran his heart out. I think back to this track, he's, he's by McKenzie, who's by Street Sense, a Derby winner. Dan Puka's by Big Brown Derby winner. He's a horse that's going to run for days. I think he could, grind it out to the wire today, and I think he could find a trip to win where he's drawn. He ran two back on the 14th of February at Santino, 1 mile in the mean special weight, winning by 4 3/4 lengths. He stalked all the way around the race course. He won by a lot. He was a little bit drifting that day, just a little bit inexperienced horse, but he got the job done. And then on the 4th of January at Santino, 1 mile in the mean special weight, he actually placed behind Rodriguez that day, and he just kind of stalked that day. Rodriguez really came home clear and, went away with it on the front end, just saying some easy fractions. But this horse, he got around the race course well over probably a trip he wasn't appreciative to. I think he wants to go a little bit longer. And then they tried him on debut on turf at Santa Anita, or Del Mar in a main special way on turf, where he finished ninth by 8 1/4 lengths. He didn't have the best beginnings. It was just a little bit wide, and he needed the race. But he's a horse that's been improving with every single race. He wants to run for days. I'm here at 12-1. Probably won't be 12-1. I think he's going to be like 7-20 to 6-1, somewhere around there. But I think he could find a trip to win. I'll use him on the ticket. Watch out for the number 9 horse, also Burnham Square for Ian Wilkes and Brian Hernandez. I like his race closing up in the clouds in the bluegrass at Keelan over the mile and the eighth, where he won by a nose. He saw a good pace to close up into a bit of a pace meltdown late, but he was a little bit wide. But he grinded it out to the wire. Very good run. Prior to the Fountain of Youth at Gulfstream with a mile 16th, he finished fourth by 3 lengths that day, where he's a little bit wide. He moved a little bit late. Sovereignty just had a little bit better trip than him, but again, he got around the race course well. And then from a wide trip in the Holy Bull, a wide trip, which is not ideal Gulfstream, but he overcame that, winning by 1 3/4 lengths, really just grinding it out to the wire. That was a good run. His races at Gulfstream over the winter, he really, was improving with every single race. Came back with a 96 buyer last time out. Coming here, he's gelding coming this one, but, a gelding has won the Derby. It's about 22 years since, when was it? Funny Side won the Derby. So, he's on the improve, coming into this one, training well. At 12-1, I'll give him a shot on the ticket. So the 8 horse journalism has done everything right for Umberto Rispoli and Mike McCarthy. Biggest question with him is he in his last 3 starts, he's run against 15 horses. Going to be running against 17 or 18 other horses in this particular race today. So he's going to have a lot of competition with him. But he won impressively in the Santino Derby, grinding it out to the wire at Santino back in early April. Won the San Felipe quite nicely with a 1-8 buyer, and won the Los Albuquerque quite nicely also, but he's gonna have a very tough, competition here today. It's gonna be he's gonna have to run the race of his life, but he's with the last 2 boundaries, he's run terrifically. He's trained this one beautifully. He's drawn beautifully also from the 8 hole. It wouldn't surprise me if he wins also, but he's a horse, he's gonna have some stiff competition today. The good horse can beat him. The good horses, can, knock that to the side and go off with it. I think he has a logical chance to win also. I'm gonna use him on the pick four. So these are the 4 horses I'm gonna use in my pick four. We talked about them. Now let's talk about the other horses in the Derby this year. Let's talk about the one horse Citizen Bull for Bob Baffert and Martin Garcia. He just ran a clunker most recently in the Santa Anita Derby where he sat on a very, not quick pace, but not slow pace either. And he just, yielded out of it, just ran a head scratcher. Maybe, just didn't show up that day. I do think he's going to run a little bit better than he did last time out in the Santa Anita Derby. I think from the inside poster, he's probably going to be tried to get quarter horse to get somewhat good position, but he's going to get bumped around from the inside. No horse from the rail from the one hole has won the Derby in about 39 years since Ferdinand in 1986. But I think with the new starting gate, it's not nearly as bad of a disadvantage, but still not the best posterized. Again, I'd rather be drawn on the outside, farther outside than the rail. But if he runs a race like the Bob Lewis or even last year's Breeders' Cup Juvenile, he could definitely win here. Give him a shot. I would definitely give him a shot if you have the extra payroll in the pick four. He's a horse I would definitely use for the supers and super high fives, but he has a tough chance from the tough draw from that inside. But it wouldn't surprise me if he also steals it on the front end, kind of, or runs a race like Bodemeister did in the Derby about 12 years ago. But watch out for him. The 2 horse Niakos for now, not Flavia, now it's going to be Luis Saez for Sappy Joseph. He stalked the pace in the Florida Derby. Had to leave for a split fortune until he got overtaken. He ran terrifically in the Derby preps. He'll probably be with them early on, but and then he's just, I don't know how good he is to keep up late. He is training well at Gulfstream, but I do have some questions if he could step up to that very good race. You know, maybe a horse for the super high fives, but he's gonna have to run really the race of his life. The 3 horse Final Gambit, it's gonna be his first start on turf here, dirt here today. He ran terrifically in the Jeff Ruby Stakes and in the main special weight prior to that at Turfway. But he's gonna have to get a little quicker on the buyer notes, and also the dirt's gonna be the biggest question with him. 30 to 1, I just can't take him here. They scratched the 4 horse Rodriguez, the 5 horse American Promise. He's a bit of a he's making his 10th start here today. Looks like a bit of a late developing colt. He won quite impressively in a very not tough Virginia Derby, winning by 7 quarter lengths from a tracking trip on a very fast course. He came home clear. Prior to him in the Risen Star, he finished 5th by 13 lengths that day, and he just kind of yielded late. And then he just came, very slow in the at Oaklawn in January in the Southwest, and came in a few times, placed 7th through disqualification. He was just a very quirky horse. He's a very big horse, also. One of the biggest horses in the in D. Wayne Lucas's history, if you go by the hands. But again, he's run races that definitely could keep up here. I think he's also a horse that's going to benefit with a mile quarter, but he just looks like he could be a big horse that's a little quirky at times. Again, I would possibly use him in the pick four if I had some extra payroll, but he's gonna have to really run the race of his life. The 6 horse Admire Daytona. I think the Japanese contingency for the last few seasons have been a little bit better than this year's. He won quite impressively in the UAE Derby, but then his races in Japan just a little bit, not as tough as the years past coming into this one. 30 to 1. I'm just not going to use him. The 7 horse Luxor Cafe for Jean Morera. Again, out of the 2 Japanese horses, I think he's the most likelier winner here. He ran terrifically at Nakayama back in March, and the win in Tokyo before that was quite impressively. Horse I would definitely use for the supers trifectas, maybe a third to get out of it. But again, I do think the Derby Japanese contingency from the last few seasons, especially last year, just were a little bit better. But I would use him in the for the trifectas. I think he get a good third place finish here. We already talked about journalism and Burnham Square. The 10 horse Grande is scratched. The 11 horse Flying Mohawk here. He's again another horse first time dirt. He ran terrifically closing up in the Jeff Ruby Stakes and broke his and won against first time winners at Oaklawn at Fairgrounds on the turf quite nicely, and broke his main on the turf course here quite nicely in October also. But he's first time dirt. he's probably gonna like them on the quarter trip, but I think he's gonna like them on the quarter trip in the Belmont Derby at Saratoga this summer or mile 316s, whatever it is. But first time dirt, I just have a little bit questions for him. Blinkers off today, is a bit of head scratcher. I just don't think he's also fast enough to run a good race here. 30 to 1, I'm just not going to use him. The 12 horse East Avenue, I have a feeling he's going to fly on the front end, just kind of yield out of it. If there's a scenario where if the track's playing towards speed, it wouldn't surprise me if he steals it on the front end. But I just think he's another horse that's going to really benefit cutting back and trip. He just yielded before then in the Bluegrass, ran horribly in the Risen Star and the Brews Cup Juvenile, but then ran terrifically in the Brewers Futurity and at Ellison last year's and a main special went on debut. He's the kind of horse he does his better running style when he's uncontested on the front end. I don't think he's going to get uncontested on the front. I think he's going to have some pace challenges. 20 to 1. I'm just not going to use him here. Like I said, I'll bet him later in the summer in the Allen Jerkins when he's cutting back 7 or in the Woody Stevens next time out. The 13 horse publisher here for Steve Aspen and Irad, he ran closing up well in the Arkansas Derby and a decent fourth closing up in the Rebel. He's a bit of a deep closer. Use him for the super high fives. He's going to have to get very lucky to win here. The 14 horse Tistastic, again, ran terrifically in Louisiana Derby and then ran clunkers in the Rebel in the Southwest. His races on this track haven't been half bad. He won quite nicely. He had a decent place behind Sovereignty in the Street Sense and then came back to run a decent third in the Kentucky Jockey Club. Again, he'll have to get lucky. I think between the two Asmussen horses, I think he is the better of them. Use him underneath in the super high five or the trifecta scenario. But I just think that it's going to be another year for Asmussen, waiting for that Derby victor. The 15 horse Red Dirt Judgment. There's some question with him having a bad hoof coming into this race. He just didn't really do a lot of running in the Bluegrass. Came a decent second in the Virginia Derby, but another horse he's going to have to get very fast on paper to win this race here. At least 10 buyer points. I just don't see it here. 16 horse Cole Paddle. He just never quickened up in that pace in the Arkansas Derby where they saw a strong pace up front. He just never really got into it late. He ran terrifically closing up from the inside in the Rebel, and then on the front end, the Smarty Jones, he ran terrifically also. He had a great early portion of the season. Last time out, a little bit of a clunker. It wouldn't surprise me if he gets a fourth or fifth. I would, I just think he's going to really have to run a race of life here. 30 to 1, I don't think he's going to go off at 30 to 1. I think he's going to get half to like 15 or 12 to 1. But, it'd be cool for the connections to win. I just don't see it. I think the 17 horse here, Sandman from Marcassi and Jose. I thought his Victor closing up well in the Arkansas Derby wasn't bad at all. He ran a decent third in the Rebel. He's done everything, well in his last two starts, and he's run some very good buyers that's been on the improve. If there's a horse, if you want to go off a buyer's, if horse is improving, it's him. He hasn't won here locally, but he's run terrifically on this track. He's training well here. At 6 to 1, another horse, use him for the trifecta, superfectas here, but I do think there are other winners here. We talked about Sovereignty. 19 horse Chuck of Gold. I kept going back to him. If there's going to be a wacky horse winning, I think it could be him. I'll definitely, if depending on his price, might do a small win wager on him. But I liked his race in Louisiana Derby where he grinded out to the wire. His race in the Risen Star, Magnitude freaked on the front end. If you told me my Derby selection the day after the Risen Star, it would have been him, Magnitude, because he ran terrifically. Unfortunately, got injured out of that run. But this horse ran well behind a decent horse. And then, his race in Leonidas wasn't bad at all either. I think, he's a riding kind of horse. He should definitely like the trip here. And I've got to have to overcome my post trip. And, 31, maybe use him on the pick four. If I had to give you a fifth selection, it would probably be him. I'd like to, yeah, if I have that extra payroll, I'm going to use him. Only bought him for $2,500. Anybody could buy him, it seems. But, watch out for him here. The 20 horse, Evan Almighty, he won quite nicely in the Tampa Derby, ran disappointingly in the Bluegrass most recently. Actually, originally was going to contend for the Pate Mile, and they were confirmed for the Pate Mile, and then they changed their mind, at the 11th hour, it seemed, to run the Derby. I just don't, he does his better running style in the front, and he's going to have to really quarter horse it out the gate to get good position. I just don't see him winning here today. He's a horse, again, cutting back to 7 furlongs, cutting back to a mile later in the season. That's where he's going to do his better running style. I'm not using him anywhere on my tickets. But now to recap my selections for the 12th race from Churchill, it's the Grade 1 $5 million Kentucky Derby. We're going to take as a top selection the 18 horse 7 Sovereignty. We're going to give kudos to the 20 horse Baeza and the 9 horse Burnham Square and the 8 horse Journalism. We're going to go 18-21 9-8 Super, and we're going to use the 18-21 9-8 to end off the pick 4. We're also going to add to the pick 4 the 19 horse Chunk of Gold also, and we're also going to add in the pick 4 to end it off the number 7 horse Luxor Cafe. We'll add him as a bit of an upsetter here, and the 1 horse Citizens Bull. But it's a very wide open Derby this year. Like I said, we're going to go with Sovereignty here. A bit of a long shot play would be Chunk of Gold, but it's going to be an exciting one. With that being said, good luck to all. Please follow me on Twitter at Horse Racing Kid 5 for more selections for race courses around the world. And join me in 2 weeks for my Preakness preview from Old Hilltop Pimlico Racecourse. Good luck, everybody.